Let's go to this prophecy update. World against Israel, Iran, Saudi Arabia, globalism, technology, societal sins. We won't get to all of them today, but let's start. World against Israel. Zechariah says all the nations of the earth will be gathered against you. Zechariah 14, 2-3. All the nations against Jerusalem. They're going to gather there to battle, and the city will be captured, houses plundered, the women ravished, and half the city exiled. But the rest of the people will not be cut off from the city. Then the Lord will go forth and fight against those nations when he fights on a day of battle. Tell me about this issue of the world against Israel, please, Dr. Woods.
Well, I mean, the reason I brought this up in a prophecy update is, related to the fact that last Wednesday, we had the Republican presidential primary. And it came out there, I think it was Nikki Haley is the only person on stage that I remember holding him responsible. But Vivek Ramaswamy is now on record saying that we're just going to treat Israel, financially like we would any other Middle Eastern country. And Israel needs to, needs to learn how to stand on their own 2 feet. And of course, Dick Morris is rightfully taking him to task for that. First of all, we couldn't do that because of the Oslo agreements. And if we did that, it would hurt a lot of American jobs. But, even more importantly than that, you had the verse up earlier. God says he'll bless those who bless us. Rather, the other way around, he'll bless those who bless Israel and curse those who curse Israel. I mean, America's support of Israel, in my opinion, is practically the only thing keeping God's hand of blessing in any semblance on our country. And here comes this 38-year-old that wants to kick out that prop. And we know that people of no
38-year-old Hindu, by the way, a 38-year-old Hindu, which I have to ask, does he have a demon? Because if he's really practicing Eastern mysticism and Hinduism, as we just discussed, even false teacher Richard Foster admits you can encounter an evil spirit, and most of these New Age occultists do encounter evil spirits. Who, by the way, many of them identify themselves as Jesus. Isn't that interesting? The author of the Bible of the New Age, if you will, of Course in Miracles, Helen Schucman, was channeling an entity that called itself Jesus. Jesus warned, many will come in my name claiming I am the Christ, many false Christs, false messiahs. So I have to ask Vivek, is he channeling a demon or two, or does he encounter demons? Because when you go into Eastern mysticism or yoga and you make the natural world dissolve and enter the silence, that is the most popular way to meet a demon, is through drugs or hypnosis. So I would have to ask him, has he encountered demons, or does he even have a demon or two?
Yeah, who knows? You go back to our first Chief Justice to the United States Supreme Court, and he basically said we have a duty as Americans to elect Christians as our leaders. I mean, our country is not based on electing people to office that have some kind of, alternative religion or alternative worldview. And I know we're, in the year 2023 and we're way beyond that statement, but I think there's a lot of wisdom in it. And beyond that, I've said for a long time that if anybody starts to speak against Israel, I'm not going to vote for them for anything. I don't care if they're running for dog catcher, and I don't care how right they are on the other issues. As far as I can tell, there's no statute of limitations on Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. The reason God has blessed our country is because George Washington, when he visited the Toro Synagogue, told the Jewish people in the United States, you're going to be able to live under your own vine and fig tree, and none will make you afraid. He gave to the Jewish people religious freedom in the United States. And Harry Truman, boldly came out and endorsed the reborn state of Israel. And Richard Nixon, in the 1973 Yom Kippur War, sent very important armaments to Israel at a very delicate time in that war. This is why God has blessed the United States of America. It's the outworking of Genesis 12, verse 3. So when I see a 38-year-old Hindu who happens to be somewhat charismatic, He happens to be articulate, and I see the corporate media getting behind him. But at the same time, he starts to speak against the nation of Israel. I'm troubled by that because he doesn't represent a biblical worldview. And we haven't even gotten to, Brandon, the very last, ultimate last article I sent you in that Word document, where Vivek Ramaswamy is also on record on podcasts articulating what he thinks is the reality of the gay gene. That you're born gay just like you're born Hispanic or born black or whatever, born Asian, born Caucasian. Well, that's a key plank of the left to create civil rights for homosexuals, which has put conservatives under legal problems, whether it's Jack Stevens or, churches that won't hire homosexuals. It's all based on this idea that Jack Stevens of Colorado, the baker, if you remember, was basically racially discriminating because he wouldn't bake a cake for a same-sex wedding. The whole premise of the legal war against him was this gay gene. And so here comes Vivek Ramaswamy articulating it. So he's wrong on that issue. He's wrong on the Israel issue. And I think we as Bible-believing Christians need to start looking at our Bible, looking at what these candidates are saying, and screening accordingly.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's a headline. Iran's plan to turn the West Bank into a terror base. Well, isn't that interesting and troubling?
Well, and you never hear this on corporate media, but this is what is this? A Gatestone article, and it's very well footnoted and documented, and it talks about how there have actually been missiles fired from Iranian proxies from the West Bank. And the article goes on and it quotes, the charters of these Iranian proxies and how they're interested not just in a two-state solution. They're interested in all of the nation of Israel and wiping the Jewish presence out of that land. And, to document whether a two-state solution would ever work, just look at what's happened with Gaza since 2005. That little southwestern sliver, in Israel's territory was given over to the, so-called Palestinians. And they had one and only one election. They elected Hamas, and that's been the beachhead for rocket attack after rocket attack and underground tunnels of terrorism and kidnapping into the land of Israel since 2005. So if the two-state solution didn't work so well with Gaza, how in the world do people think it's going to work with the so-called West Bank? And here's evidence that Iran, as of recent, has a presence in the West Bank through its proxies and has actually fired missiles from the West Bank into the land of Israel. And so this is all the outworking of prophecy, which anticipates a belligerent Persia or Iran in the last days, albeit Ezekiel 38 and 39. And so that's why I found this article very interesting.
Yeah, here is one. Riyadh seeks to reboot Temple Mount status quo with peace deal. Saudi Arabia intends to replace Jordan as custodian of the holy site. We talked about this last week with you and Dr. Rob Lindstedt, and this is such a big story, but it's hardly making any news here in the United States of America. But this is such a humongous story on so many levels, because we know that for them to get that third temple, that really starts things running on the clock. The Antichrist showing up, confirming a peace treaty, the image that speaks blasphemy in the temple. This is a big deal. And of course, we have the BRICS banking system last week. They're announcing they're going to add Saudi Arabia. Makes you wonder if Israel's going to throw in with them. I think they are. We'll be right back. Talk about the Temple Mount in Saudi Arabia. As we know, the BRICS banking system, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they announced in their summit last week that they're going to add Saudi Arabia and Egypt and United Arab Emirates and Iran January 2024. I mean, here we go. It's de-dollarization. It is on. Over the weekend, I was talking to some folks and I was just saying, look, the average American has no idea what just happened. I'm even asking friends of mine, do you realize what just happened? I talked to a friend of mine this morning who I've known since I was in second grade, and he had no clue. He had no clue what had just happened. And I said, look, I don't give financial advice, I give financial opinion, but I know you got a bunch of money in the stock market, 401k, and I'm just telling you my thoughts on that and where I think things are headed and what you should be doing. But, people are absolutely oblivious to the economic earthquake that just occurred and what's coming in 2024 and this transition, this de-dollarization, and how fast it's going to happen, I don't know. But I know this can happen and happen quick. And we played the Democrat congressman, I think from Pennsylvania, from 2008, that talked about how in 2008 things were starting to unravel. And within one day, there would have been a global economic collapse had they not shut everything down and shut the windows down from people making withdrawals. So things can happen and happen so fast, you have no time to react or plan. It can all happen within one day, a global collapse. That congressman went on to explain that in that old clip I've played numerous times. But this idea of a new currency group or collection of currencies that will trade oil in the world market, coming out of Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, now adding in Iran, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, etc. Huge story. And now you add in Benjamin Netanyahu negotiating with Israel to turn the Temple Mount over to Saudi Arabia, not Jordan. The train that they're building, the train route they're going to build from Saudi Arabia to Israel, and that's a quote, holy site for both Jews and Muslims. This is staggering. And then, as we've said before, it makes sense why we read in Ezekiel 38, 39, that Saudi Arabia is sitting on the sidelines during the invasion going, what are you guys doing? But then you add in the fact that they could negotiate the building of a tabernacle, a temporary tabernacle. You got the heifers there. You could start the purification process. Even before a permanent temple, you could have the tabernacle up there. I mean, this is all moving fast. And I actually started researching a couple weeks ago, maybe a month ago, Israel joining the BRICS system, found a white paper, a PDF white paper, where it was being talked about. I think the paper was from back in 2011, 12, 13, 14, somewhere in there. But I would not be shocked to see Israel join the BRICS banking system. What are your thoughts, Dr. Woods?
Well, it wouldn't shock me either. I mean, we have a tendency, because we're so pro-Israel, we have a tendency to act as if they're going to act in a, Christ-honoring way. That's not what the Bible indicates. What it indicates is prior to Israel's conversion, which won't happen until nationally the second half of the tribulation period, the city of Jerusalem, Revelation 11, verse 8, will be just like Sodom and Egypt. After all, it's Israel that's going to enter into the deal with the devil, the peace treaty or the confirmation of the agreement of some sort with the Antichrist. So the fact that Israel, would lead the way into the New World Order, that doesn't surprise me. I think you covered, maybe 6 months to a year ago, how Israel, it was sort of on the precipice of bringing in this kind of medical database related to COVID, into of Israel to exercise surveillance over its own citizens, cooperating again with the global agenda. That shouldn't be surprising either, because before Israel can be a believing nation, she has to be an unbelieving nation. She has a program to fulfill in unbelief and a program to fulfill in belief. And the very next thing is the program that she's going to fulfill in unbelief. So her joining BRICS and some of these other things is really not surprising to me.
Yeah. Well, a lot more to watch, that's for sure. Here, look at this one here. Biden close to declaring climate emergency to ration gas, electricity, and meat. I'm also hearing of potential, I don't know how they would get it in us, either through vaccines or people being shed on or mosquitoes. But the goal to eventually have people have some kind of chemical in their body that it actually makes them sick when they eat meat, so they all stop eating meat. I mean, I wouldn't put anything past these guys, but I'm also hearing and I saw the video clip, and it's in my news report tonight, Worldview Report. Biden is saying, I'm going to Congress for more money for a new vaccine, and he's talking about forcing this on everybody.
So they're very much after this two-tiered society where the elites live one way, and then there's just crumbs for the rest of us. Sad that it's coming, but it's actually predicted in God's word. You know, you'll see it right there in Revelation 13, 16 through 18.
Absolutely. 1-800-347-9829. Your thoughts, your comments, your questions.
What are the next two, the couple fall feasts that haven't been fulfilled? Jesus fulfilled the spring feast. What are, other than up to Sukkot, happens in the millennium? I'm more familiar with that one. But what are the next couple fall feasts that have to be fulfilled yet?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree with the premise that you have these spring feasts already fulfilled in the first coming, and we're waiting for the fall feasts. So I think Israel's conversion towards the end of the tribulation period will happen on Yom Kippur. I don't think the rapture is the Feast of Trumpets the way many people teach it. I think Rosh Hashanah, New Year, will be fulfilled in Matthew 24:31, where Jesus summons the elect Israel from the four corners of the earth at the end of the tribulation period via a trumpet. And then I also agree with him that Sukkot or tabernacles will be fulfilled in the millennial reign of Christ, and you see a reference to that in Zechariah 14, 16 through 18. So you've got the spring feasts fulfilled in the first coming, then you've got a long hiatus on the calendar. That's what we're in now, that hiatus, the church age. But then you're going to see those eschatological feasts fulfilled yet future in the three feasts that I just mentioned in the fall.
1-800-347-9829. Phone line open, 1-800-347-9829. We'll take your calls the rest of the broadcast.